Hey, today we're going to be talking about the most underrated weapons in the game and why they're better than most people give them credit for. Before we can get into the underrated weapons though, we first have to define what makes a weapon underrated. Well, we could just call any weapon that doesn't get used as much as its damage or utility deserves. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to define underrated weapon as any weapon that is significantly stronger than weapons considered to be equal to it. For example, while every dagger other than the curved dagger doesn't get used as much as it, they're not what I'd consider to be underrated because most people know that they're all roughly equal. Now that we know what I mean by underrated weapon, we can start talking about the actual weapons. Number 5. Light axes. This is really more of a group than it is a singular blade, but they're all worth talking about for this. Basically, despite their relatively low cost, 3, 4, and 5 respectively, they deal good damage, with the curved axe dealing comparable damage to the longsword, despite the axe costing less than half as much to make. Number 4. The chisel. Bet you didn't expect to see this one on the list, but here it is. I know that the chisel being good is treated like a meme usually, but for the cost of 2 ingots, nothing else deals as much damage as the chisel. Also, it's a chisel. Number 3. The great axe. This one isn't as much an issue of nobody using it, or of people thinking it's bad, but just that people don't understand exactly how good it really is. Damage-wise, it's the highest damaging weapon without a phantom guard, and even when compared to phantom guarded weapons, it holds up pretty well. Number 2. The Naginata blade. Anyone who's used this weapon much knows that it's literally just a shorter, worse katana blade. So why is it placed so high on this list? Because of one simple thing. When on a phantom guard, the katana gets roughly a 20% damage buff, but the Naginata gets around an 80% damage buff. Number 1. The Shotel. Not only do people not understand that this is, at bare minimum, equal to the short sword, which costs the same amount, but also it has a special feature. When on a phantom guard, the short sword gets roughly a 20% damage buff. The Shotel, on the other hand, gets well over 100% damage buff. That fact, combined with its light weight, actually makes it the blade of choice for the highest DPS weapon in the game. And people are still saying that it's not as good. And that's what I consider to be the 5 most underrated weapons in the game. As a reminder, I'm still accepting weapon submissions for the next episode of Weapon Review. So, if you've got a weapon you want to know my opinion on, as well as its overall ranking compared to other weapons in the game, the submissions link is in the description. But, with all that said, I'll see you around.